Chapter 10: Further Education. After the training, I took many other courses and seminars offered by the EST organization, and I continued to broaden my vision for what was possible in both my business and my personal life. All of them contributed to my education and to my seeing the possibility of building an extraordinary organization and living an extraordinary life. The Body Seminar and the Marathon. The Body Seminar was an associated course I took right after the training. It was the catalyst for another significant change in my life, from being relatively sedentary to becoming very physically active. I enrolled in the Body Seminar in April 1981 when I was 46 years old. The course itself focused on self-improvement and was designed to help participants experience all aspects of their body. We were encouraged to take a commitment to fix what we didn't like about our bodies if it was fixable, and if it was not fixable, to make friends with and like what we have. For me, that particular seminar led to an experience that harkened back to the traumatic race I ran in Barbados when I was 17 years old. To explain, when I started that seminar, I had a bit of a belly, and I was not prepared to make friends with it. I was too vain, so I decided to try to lose weight and the belly. I had been doing the dieting and weight dance for many years, 5 pounds up, 5 pounds down, and I knew that if it was going to be different this time, I had to make a long-term commitment to lose weight and keep it off. Now, it just so happened that I had watched the running of the marathon at the Olympics on television a year earlier. That race really impressed me. Because I had had a little experience as a runner when I was 17, I was in awe of the people who could run a marathon, a 42-kilometer race. Until then, I had never thought of running a marathon, but at the Body Seminar, running a marathon seemed like a good way to shed some weight and lose the belly. So I stood up and declared to the room, I will run the Montreal Marathon in September. And I started training. 5 months of training for a 42-kilometer race is a very short training period, especially if you have not been exercising regularly and you are out of shape. Nonetheless, I watched my food intake, trained vigorously, and ran and ran and ran. I lost 40 pounds, suffered various injuries, had many cortisone shots, visits to chiropractors, etc. The training also intruded on my family life. When my family was having supper, I was out running. When Shirley wanted to socialize in the evening, I was out running. My whole life at that time became focused on training and running. Eventually, Shirley put her foot down. I needed her support, and I got it, but only on the condition that I would do only one marathon. During the training period, I also received a lot of support from Ruben Reisler, who I met at the Body Seminar. He became a lifelong friend as well as my running buddy. On the day of the marathon, I took the subway to St. Helens Island, where the running was to begin. On the way, I was surrounded by dozens of young men and women. They made me very aware of my age, and I asked myself, Max, are you nuts? What are you doing here? I took my position on the bridge with about 8,000 other runners and waited for the race to begin. I was intimidated by the whole situation. There were 2 young black men standing next to me who were obviously in great physical shape. They were hopping up and down, warming up like 2 magnificent racehorses, anxious to start running. Now that was intimidation. Again, I asked myself, Max, what are you doing here? The starter's gun went off and the race began. The 2 black runners took off and quickly disappeared. My training partner, Ruben, had agreed to meet me at a predetermined spot and run the last 16 kilometers with me as support. When he joined me, I was already struggling, but I had had the support of family and friends along the way to cheer me on, and every time I saw a familiar face, it gave me renewed energy, and I kept going. At about 34 kilometers, I hit the wall. Now, anyone who has never had the experience is unlikely to understand what that means. You just run out of steam. You become completely depleted and you have nothing left. Every step is agony and is executed with a groan. You are sure you cannot take another 10 steps. With the finish line still 7 kilometers away, I said to Ruben, "It's all over. I have nothing left and I can't go any further." He tried to encourage me and I managed a few more steps. Then I saw the two black guys lying by the side of the road, finished. That sight brought back the vision of my race in Barbados when I had been intimidated because the runner ahead of me was black and I didn't even try. But seeing those two black guys lying on the side of the road gave me a surge of energy that enabled me to finish the race. I ran that marathon in 4 hours and 10 minutes. At the finish line, I couldn't wait to find Shirley to say, "I'm sorry, but I've got to do another one." I didn't do this marathon, it did me. My training time had been too short, I had lost too much weight, and I had not been adequately conditioned. I was not strong enough. A year later, I ran the New York Marathon with two good friends, Marvin Helfenbaum of Montreal and Joel Schwartz of New York City. It was their first marathon. Our plan was to run together. Marvin knew I had hit the wall in my first marathon, and he was determined that none of us would hit the wall in New York. He was very disciplined and developed a running strategy for us. He had set times for every 5 kilometers to ensure that we ran more slowly at the beginning so that we had enough energy to finish the race. I was better trained and in much better condition for New York than I had been for Montreal. I had also put back some weight and I was much stronger. At about 25 kilometers, I said to Marvin and Joel, "I'm sorry, but I can't hold back anymore," and I took off and left them behind. I ran much faster for the balance of the race and finished in 3 hours and 44 minutes, feeling very strong and not at all depleted. But even though I had had a great marathon, I was not satisfied. I felt sure I could have run a much better time had I not held back in the first half. So I ran another marathon in Montreal a year later. Then my wife's patience ran out. Although I stopped running marathons, I remained a serious runner for another 8 years until I switched to power walking and biking. I have never given up my commitment to staying physically fit. My thanks to the Body Seminar. Training for and running a marathon requires a major commitment and an enormous amount of effort. In fact, it often requires more effort than you feel you can give. I have enormous respect for anyone who can make that kind of commitment and actually complete a marathon. The lesson I learned from my marathon experience is that one of the criteria for success is doing whatever it takes. If anyone were to ask me today, what do the people who have built successful businesses and sustained them over time have in common? I would answer, it is doing whatever it takes. No, yes, but. It's too difficult or I can't do it. You simply do whatever it takes. My marathon days instilled that in me. Doing whatever it takes became part of my way of being, and I believe that attitude has contributed substantially to whatever success I have had. The 6-day course. By far the most powerful course I took with EST was the 6-day course, which was given at a location in the Catskill Mountains. The course focused on the study of 5 principles: responsibility, commitment, integrity, impeccability, support, giving and receiving. From studying these principles, participants learned new distinctions for them. New distinctions meaning new understandings, new insights, new perspectives, and new meanings for those principles. For 5 consecutive days, we spent 18 hours a day studying each principle. On the 6th day, we had an activity-based event called the Ropes course, where we applied the new distinctions we had learnt for these principles. The Ropes course was a one-day event involving several intimidating and challenging physical tests that included rappelling oneself backwards down a rock face, traversing a gorge by pulling oneself across a span of ropes strung between 2 mountain peaks, and a number of other equally challenging feats. Let me describe the circumstances under which I acquired my new distinctions. Before participants were allowed to enroll in the 6-day course, we were required to make a commitment to 2 conditions. The first was that we would do exactly what we were told, and the second was that we would participate fully in the Ropes course. Anyone who would not or could not commit to these 2 conditions would not be accepted. I agreed to the conditions and I enrolled. There were about 130 of us in the course. The course room, where we spent 18 hours a day, was set up theater style with an elevated platform at the front where the course leader sat. We slept approximately 2 to 4 hours a day. We had 1 hour for dinner and 2 short rest breaks. On the first day, the course leader introduced himself and talked a bit about what we could expect over the next 6 days. He also reminded us of our 2 commitments: to do as we were told and to complete the Ropes course. He then asked us to turn around and to look towards a far corner of the room where there was a huge pile of what looked like junk, bundles of tangled up rope, wheels, mallets, pegs, pulleys, and more. And then said, "You see that pile of stuff over there? That's your Ropes course. We have a Ropes course leader on staff who knows how to set up all this equipment. The day before your Ropes course, a group of volunteers will come here, take instructions from the Ropes course leader, and those volunteers are going to set up your course. You will be putting your lives on the ropes that they set up for you." Everyone was horrified. Volunteers will be setting up the Ropes course? Nobody told me about this before I enrolled. This is outrageous. I've been deceived. It isn't right. I'm going to die on that Ropes course, etc., etc. "I'm going to die on that Ropes course" became the foundation on which we went on to study the 5 principles, with the specter of death constantly in the background. A good example of how our fear of dying was used to reinforce what we were learning occurred on the day we explored the principle of commitment. We had spent the entire day defining, discussing, debating, and dissecting everything anyone could possibly imagine about commitment. About 2 in the morning, everyone was very tired. The course leader asked us, "Would everybody please stand up?" So we all stood up. Then he said, "Thank you, now sit down." Everyone sat down. "Please stand up." We stood up. "Now sit down." We sat down. He continued having us stand up and sit down. By the 10th time, half the room remained seated. By the 20th time, no one stood up. After a long silence, our course leader asked, "What's going on here? I asked you to stand up. Why aren't you standing up? I thought that when you enrolled in this course, you made a commitment to do as you are told." Then the answers poured forth. "Yes, but this doesn't make any sense. It's 2 o'clock in the morning, we're tired, and you're asking us to stand up and sit down for no good reason. There's no purpose to this. This is childish. I'm not a robot. I'm not going to do what you say if it doesn't make sense," and so on. The course leader then asked a second time, "But didn't you make a commitment that you would do as you are told?" And the answers came again. "Yes, but this doesn't make any sense. It's stupid. I'm not just going to stand here and have you take advantage of me," and on and on. "But you made a commitment that you would do as you were told." Now, if whatever I ask you to do is not comfortable or does not make sense to you, you're not going to do it? So what does that say about what commitment means to you? Apparently, the way you live with commitment is that you're committed only for as long as it's comfortable or convenient, as long as it makes sense to you. But the moment you're not comfortable or the commitment doesn't suit you, you're not committed anymore. Now let's just think about that. If the volunteers who are coming here to set up your ropes course are committed the way all of you are committed, that is, as long as everything is comfortable, convenient, and makes sense to them, then someone is going to die on that ropes course. If the ropes course leader says, I want you to hammer this peg into the rock 100 times to make sure the sucker never moves, and a volunteer thinks that he knows better than the course leader and decides that 30 times is enough, and it is stupid to do more, someone will die on that course. Don't think you are unique. Most people live their lives with exactly the same kind of commitment all of you have just shown. Now every one of you has to come to terms with what commitment really means to you. If you are committed only as long as it's comfortable or it suits you, then you are not keeping your word. That's not commitment. And that's not what we've spent the last 18 hours talking about. So from a background of someone dying on the ropes course, everyone in the room embraced a powerful new distinction for commitment. And from that same background, we went on to study and learn powerful new distinctions for responsibility, integrity, impeccability, and support. We also learned that even though the volunteers had never set up a ropes course before, all of them had already taken the 6-day course, and so they were living out of those same distinctions and applying those distinctions to setting up the course. Nothing would be left to chance. We were safe. Discovering a truth. On day 4 of the course, we studied integrity. Late that evening, I had an experience that highlighted for me how much my organization did not work, and it focused me on what was missing in the company in a way that nothing ever had before. That experience created a new beginning for Shermax. Outside the course room, the participants were divided into small groups of 8, which functioned as support groups. Maria Mutsov, a woman from Montreal, was one of the members of my support group, and at one point during a late break, she came over to me and asked, Max, what's the matter? You look like you're upset and having a hard time. I told her everything was fine and that I was not upset. But she kept pressing me, and I realized that truly I was not myself. I was very impressed with the organization that ran the 6-day course and how effective they were. By comparison, my organization was grossly ineffective. None of the principles we were studying, responsibility, commitment, integrity, impeccability, and support, especially in the light of my new distinctions for them, existed in my organization. After I had shared all this with Maria, she said something to the effect of, Max, aren't you being a little hard on yourself? Maybe you're focusing too much on the negative and not appreciating all the positive aspects of your organization. I am familiar with your company and I think you should be proud of it. It's not just a money-making enterprise. You are making a difference in your community. You are dressing pregnant women and helping them feel good about themselves. Have you any idea how important your contribution is to them? And as if that wasn't enough, you found another huge void in the marketplace, plus sizes. You are giving plus-size women the opportunity to dress well and feel good about themselves too. Also, I run a placement service, and from time to time I try to steal people from your company. I can't get them to move. So you can't tell me that you're not doing a lot of things right. I don't think you're justified in feeling the way you do. Tell me, Max, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your organization? I thought for a moment, and in the light of what Maria had just said to me, I replied about 7 out of 10. And Maria said, so there you are. Sure, you have some fixing to do, but I don't see that it warrants your being depressed about it. I felt much better when we resumed our session. I went to bed around 4:30 a.m., and even though I was sleep deprived and dead tired, I could not fall asleep. As I said earlier, we had studied integrity, telling the truth that day, and lying there, visualizing my company at work, it became clear to me that I had not told Maria or myself the truth when I rated the company 7 out of 10. With my new distinctions as a backdrop, I saw that our management group was not operating as a team with a common objective. They were not supporting each other and pulling in the same direction. No one was taking responsibility. Rather than supporting each other, everyone was being defensive, undermining, and blaming everyone else. There was a lot of complaining and frustration. Commitment, integrity, and impeccability were not part of our culture. Everyone was vying for my attention, and I was caught in the middle. All of the responsibility for everything was on my shoulders. It was clear to me that by any definition of an organization that works, my organization did not work. In the morning, I went straight to Maria at breakfast and I said to her, "Maria, I am out of integrity with you. Last night I told you that on a scale of 1 to 10, I would rate my company as 7. That is not the truth. The truth is that 2 out of 10 would be generous." That moment was one of the most important ahas of my business life. I saw that I had not been telling the truth about the state of affairs in my company and how much not telling the truth costs. I also began to understand how difficult it would be for me to transform the company into an effectively run organization. After experiencing my new distinctions at work in the ropes course, I saw that if I could live my life out of these 5 principles, I would have the makings of an extraordinary life. And if I could bring those same principles into my business, it would create incredible workability. So I made a commitment to bring these principles into both my life and the organization. My enthusiasm to make that happen was truly boundless, and I put a lot of pressure on all my senior management to take the training. That upset a lot of people, and they refused because they felt I was pushing them beyond the scope of business and intruding into their personal lives. But that did not dampen my commitment to bring those principles into the company. I just had to find another way. Harvey Horowitz. After the 6-day course, Shirley and I enrolled in a communications workshop which was also given by EST. Harvey Horowitz was the course leader of that workshop. He was a great teacher. From my experience with him in that workshop and other subsequent seminars, it was clear to me that he knew and understood all the principles and distinctions that I wanted to bring into the company, and that he lived his life according to those principles. Harvey was interested in doing some outside consulting, so I invited him to join our company. His mandate was to help me bring those principles and distinctions to the organization. On a day-to-day basis, Harvey also became my coach, helping me develop my communication and management skills. Harvey designed a number of workshops especially for us and presented them to all management. Within a short time, however, those programs were perceived as a covert way to expose them to the training. After about a year, there was a virtual revolt, and I received a delegation from the management group with an ultimatum to cease and desist from promoting anything that was even remotely associated with the training, or they would resign en masse. I was shocked by that development because truly I did not realize how zealous I had become and what effect my zeal was having on the people around me. Of course, I acceded to their demand. I had no choice. I agreed not to promote or even talk about anything related to the training at Shermax. Harvey and I worked well together and we developed a great relationship. However, under the circumstances, Harvey decided to leave Shermax, but he did not leave me. Our relationship has continued until today, and even though I am no longer in business, I still consider him to be a mentor and dear friend. Despite my promise, a promise that I kept absolutely, my determination to create the kind of organization I envisioned did not wane for a moment. I simply stopped sharing the training with the people at Shermax and started living my life out of the principles I had learned. I shared and promoted those principles as if they were my own. That was accepted by everyone, and over time I was able to shape and mold the Shermax culture to embody those principles. But it was not an easy task, and it certainly did not happen overnight. Along the way, I continued to take other landmark courses in an effort to further my education and improve my management skills. Mastery of Empowerment. This course was given over several days at a location in the mountains of upstate New York. As the title clearly states, the course was about empowerment, learning how to empower others to be as good as they can be. 2 incidents occurred during that course that made deep impressions on me. There were about 75 people in the course. We were given an assignment by the course leaders to work together as a group to set up and operate a model business, a hypothetical organization and operation. The course leaders left us to our own devices but remained in the background as observers. It did not take long for the entire exercise to disintegrate into chaos. There was no leadership, people were not working together, and everyone had his or her own agenda. There was no team. Everyone was trying to outdo everyone else, and no one was listening. Eventually, my patience ran out, and I saw that it was necessary for someone to take charge, so I stepped in and imposed myself as the leader. The group was a mixed bag of people from many walks of life, including professionals and presidents of large corporations. I set out to try to bring everyone into line and create some order out of the chaos. That proved to be difficult, and when the going got really tough, my true colors emerged. My true colors at the time, that is. My management style was very heavy-handed, based on threats and orders to do it my way. Eventually, the course leaders stepped in to analyze what was going on in the room in terms of empowerment. The objective of the exercise, after all, was to get us in touch with the concept of empowerment and observe our ability to empower others. Because I had drawn attention to myself by trying to take charge, they used me, focusing on my behavior and my management style as an exercise of what not to do and what was inappropriate. They used me as a scapegoat and were very hard on me. It was clear to everyone from this exercise that I was a disaster as a leader. This was a Mastery of Empowerment course, and it was obvious that I didn't have any understanding at all of the meaning of empowerment. The experience was both confronting and humiliating. I came face to face with who I was as a leader, and it was one of the catalysts that triggered a process of change in my management style. I will always treasure the second incident. For the duration of the course, all the participants were assigned to teams. Each 8-member team functioned as a support group. Team members had the opportunity to observe each other, and on the final day, each team was asked to meet together, and each of the members took a turn in critiquing the other 7 members, not as criticism, but out of support. The objective was for each member of the group to contribute to the other members and make them aware of aspects of their lives that could be improved. There were no holds barred, and the sessions were very confronting, but they were also valuable opportunities to learn in a supportive environment how we were seen by others. One of the members of our group was an astronaut who had been a fighter pilot in the Korean War. He was the last to give his critique, so by the time he got to me, I had already been critiqued by 6 others, and I must admit I had taken quite a beating. When his turn came, he said, "Max, no matter what anybody else says, I would have you as my wingman any day." I never forgot that. I consider it the finest compliment anyone ever paid to me. He was saying that he would put his life in my hands. For me, that was very, very empowering. So Harvey was no longer with Shermax, and I made a commitment to stop my crusade. However, my problems had not gone away, and I still blamed my executive team for all that was wrong with the company. I felt they were inept and ineffective, and that they could not help me take the company where I wanted it to go. I had pretty well decided that I had to replace most of them, but fortunately, before I could take any action, my guardian angel intervened by sending me David Melnick, who prevented me from making that terrible mistake. The AMA President's Course. Martin Richter was one of the owners of a major ladies' fashion buying office in New York. He was also one of my first mentors. I was on a buying trip to the Orient with Martin, and one Sunday afternoon after a busy week, we were resting by the pool at our hotel in Taiwan, and I shared my frustrations with him about how inept I felt we were as a company. Martin couldn't advise me as to strategies, but he recommended that I attend the President's Course offered by the American Management Association. He told me that the AMA teaches a management model that is used by most mid to large size organizations around the world. He suggested that if I took the President's Course, I would learn that management model and the processes fundamental to managing an organization effectively. I followed his recommendation and enrolled in the course. The course I attended was given at Pebble Beach Golf Course in California. It was a very difficult and intimidating experience for me. There were approximately 60 people, all of whom were accomplished executives and business leaders, and then there was me. I felt that by comparison I was inadequate and that I had none of the abilities or business acumen the others had. They were professional managers and I was a babe in the woods. From the course, I learned a structured approach to managing, and I was given a management model to follow and implement. David Melnick. David was one of the participants in my course. He was a lawyer and CEO of a trust company in Toronto. I guess that because I felt so intimidated by the others, and maybe because David resembled my father, I gravitated towards him. From his first interactions and contributions in the course, it was clear that David had some very special abilities. He is a very knowledgeable and experienced business executive, skilled in the principles of business organization and management. He is also a genuine people person who is focused on empowerment. At the time, David was planning to resign from the trust company, and his future plans were still vague. I asked him if he would consider coming to Montreal on a part-time basis to help me with the management of my company. David came to Montreal and spent several days with us in a series of management meetings. At the end of those sessions, he came to me and said, "Max, I think you want something from me that I cannot give you. You are asking me to help you run your business. I cannot do that. I am not a retailer. You are much better at your business than I can possibly be, but I see that you need help with your management and leadership skills. Your people are not the problem, you are. You are the source of most of the problems here, and you are out of your depth trying to manage this group of executives. You need help. You need coaching on empowering your people. You act out of frustration. You are a yeller and a screamer, and you intimidate people. It is amazing that they stay here and work with you. If you would like, I will undertake a mandate to be your coach, to help you improve your communication skills, teach you how to behave as a senior executive, and teach you how to empower your people and to be an effective leader." I can also help you bring structure and organization to your company." I said, "Thank you very much, David, but that's not what I need. You want to fix me, but that is not my priority. I need help running this company, and I was hoping you would help me with that. If you can, fine. If not, thank you." He said, "I'm sorry, Max, I cannot help you," and he left and went back to Toronto. Over the next couple of weeks, I was able to absorb all that David had said to me, and fortunately, I realized that everything he had said was true. I went to Toronto, met with David, and said, "Okay, I accept. We will do it your way." David worked with me as a coach for 2.5 years. Just as he was candid in his evaluation of me, he was equally frank in his ongoing coaching, teaching, and training. He watched me with a very critical eye. He didn't mince words, and he told me like it was. In many respects, my relationship with David mirrored the relationship I had had with my father. As with my father, it seemed I could do nothing right. But I welcomed his critiques and input because I knew what was at stake. I took it all, I absorbed it all. I was like a sponge. It was David who made me see, understand, that I had been the source of the problems we were having. Luckily, I never got around to a wholesale replacement of my executive team. Instead, over time, I learned to work with and empower them to be successful. After 2.5 years of David's intense coaching, I felt I had had enough. I said, "David, it's time for me to fly on my own," and that part of our relationship was over. However, he did stay on as one of my board of advisors, which became Shermack's board of directors when we went public in 1986. He remained on our board until the day we sold the company. David had a profound influence on me, and to whatever extent I improved over the years, much of the credit certainly goes to David. David and I remain very close friends. My reference to going public in 1986 brings to mind an incident that occurred several months later and which had its origins, albeit obliquely, in my early school days. Sometime after we went public, I was in a meeting with our auditor, Justin Fry, a senior partner of Coopers & Lebrun, our accounting firm at the time. Justin happened to mention that he was going to Bridgetown, Barbados for a few days to meet with the managing partner of Cooper & Lebrun in Barbados, a gentleman by the name of Trehane. "Trehane?" I asked. "There are many Trehanes in Barbados. What's his first name?" "Harold," Justin replied. "Harold Trehane? That's impossible," I said. "Harold Trehane was a boyhood friend of mine. We were both at the bottom of the class when we were in high school, and I know he quit school before graduating. I lost touch with him when I left Barbados." "Interesting," said Justin. "You wouldn't know then that a few years after leaving high school, Harold took a correspondence course in accounting and became a chartered accountant. Harold is now a very successful CA and has been the managing partner of our firm in Barbados for many years." "Well, I'll be damned," I said. "Please give him my very best regards when you see him." So when Justin Fry went to the island and met with Trehane, he started his conversation with, "One of our clients in Montreal, who is the CEO of a major public fashion retail company, asked me to pass along his best regards to you. His name is Konigsberg." "Konigsberg? Which Konigsberg?" "Max Konigsberg." "That's impossible. Max and I went to school together and we were both very poor students." "Well," Justin said, "for two students from the bottom of the class, you've both done very well for yourselves." "Well, I'll be damned," Harold said. And so it was that Harold Trehane came back into my life, and I'm happy to say that we have maintained contact ever since. I feel just as happy for his achievements and success as I'm sure he feels about mine. I tell this story here partly because of the coincidence of our reestablishing contact, but also because when we were boyhood friends, neither of us expected to become very much of anything, let alone successful.